Good day. Thank you for joining us for SQL Solutions. We're going to create a folder in the Documents directory called Auction Data, and there are three CSV files that we'll use for imports to import the data from our textbook about auctions, bidders, and bids to follow along in the examples provided in Chapter 3. If you would, right-click in this folder and start a new Microsoft Access database. You should give it the same name, SQL Solutions, SQL Solution, and put a comma and then your first initial and last name. When it opens up, you're going to want to enable the content, and you'll go to the External Data menu. This is for the first stage. You're going to click on the text file option here, and we're going to look in the, going to import a source data, the source data from a file, and we're going to look inside auction data, and we'll start with auctions table. When we click OK, it's going to open up and ask us if we're dealing with delimited or fixed width. We're going to accept the default. We're going to check the next box here, the next option for first row containing field names, because the first row of each CSV file has the field headers. So I'm going to select that. That's going to parse out the field headers and use those to create a table with those field header names. That's very convenient. You see it also detects that it's comma separated. There are other types of data delimited files, tab delimited, and so on. I'm going to go ahead in the next column, and I want to use this as a primary key, which means that duplicates are not okay. So where I'm indexing, I'm going to say yes, no duplicates, and that's going to allow that to be successful. You'll notice the data type up here is long integer. If I select volume, it's long integer. If I select district, it's long integer. The date poses a problem, so we want to change the data type here to short text, and that's going to solve some problems for us when we try to import. I want to choose my own primary key. I don't want access to create an additional one. It's just crazy. So when I do this, it automatically senses auction ID as a suitable candidate. I'm going to go ahead and click next. I'm going to give it the T auctions using camel case, because this is going to become a database object, a table, and so I'm going to use T. I'm going to click finish, and I can save the import steps if I have a lot of data imports using the same criteria, but I don't need to do that here. I'm going to say close. We'll do the same again for the other two files. We're going to look at bidders, and when we say OK to this, same process. I'm going to check the box to enable first row for field names. I'm going to say yes, no duplicates. In this case, I'm going to select telephone, and I'm going to, in your textbook it says that this poses a problem. It specifies text as the data type for this. That's going to solve some problems for us again. I'll choose my own primary key, and I want it to be bidder ID. And I'll click next, and I'll give it the name T bidders. Click finish and close. One more time. I have a bids table. I'm going to import the bids table, accept that first default, select first row contains field names. I'm going to say yes, no duplicates. I want to check the bid column to see if instead of integer it shows a double, it shows a float or real number type, and double is a real number type, so that solves a problem. So when it saw decimal points access importing the data, said, oh, this has to be a real or a float. I'm going to choose my own primary key, which is going to be bit ID. I'll make the name of this tbids and finish and close. At this point, I'd like to create some joins or relationships between these three. So this ends stage one. You would want to, I think you'd want to go ahead and take a screenshot. I think the criteria has you display each of the tables, and in particular, you're supposed to show the design view so that we can see that telephone was changed from integer to short text. And actually, auctions, if we show design view, it would show the date was changed to short text from number. So that's the first screenshot right there. Make sure that when you take the screenshot, you include the title bar to the point where we can see your name and the path for the database file here, and this is exactly what you should show. Stage two, we're going to close all of the tables, because if we don't, when we go to database tools and show relationships and try to build the relationships, it squawks and says that the tables are open. So we're going to add all of these. I can shift click and add them. When I do this, you're going to notice that if I hold this, scroll this down, and slide this over, and put bids in between, there's some common fields. So the primary key here, auction ID, is repeated again, same data type in the bids table, and the bidder ID is repeated again in this table. So I'm going to drag and drop auction ID. I'm going to select referential integrity and updates and create that. And give it a little bit more space here so we can see that infinity symbol a little better. I'm going to slide the same thing over from the bidders table, the bidders ID, onto the bidders ID and the bids table, and select referential integrity and update. So for my screenshot, I have to select one of these relationships and then right click it and edit the relationship so that the criteria I've used to create these joins by forming the relationships, right? It gives us a standard set of joins for the relationship I've just formed. This would be the second screenshot, and this would end stage two. So at that point, we can click OK. We can close this window, this tab. It says, do you want to save the changes? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to select the auditions tab. So this is stage 3. I'm going to do a simple query using a SQL statement, standard SQL statement. We just want to view the contents of the auctions table. So we're going to create, and we'll go straight into query design view. And I'm going to select the auctions table and close this. And then I'm going to change the view to SQL view. And you can see that there's another line here, but basically what I want to do is I want to put an asterisk right here, select all, and then I'm going to delete this line. So it says select asterisk from T auctions, and then there's a semicolon at the end here. If I run this, basically using the run exclamation point, I see the exact numbers and results that are shown in the listing in the textbook. And basically what we want to do is we want to save this and close it. with a descriptive name, so we'll use a small q because it's a query, and we're going to say that so you want to take a screenshot of this, and this would be the screenshot you need for stage 3. But as I close this, it's going to ask me if I want to save it, and I'm going to say yes, and I'll say this is q view auctions table. And I want to be that explicit and include the word table because I'm just displaying the entire table. If I said view auctions, depending on other SQL statements, that might involve other things. So I'm viewing that database object. I say OK. Now if I try bidders, what I'd like to do at this point, or no, stage 4, what we want to do is view we want to view all the bids based on a bidder ID. And in order to do that, what we want to do is enter some criteria for a query. So we're going to select tbids, and we're going to go to create query design again. And this time we're going to select the bids table and close that. And what we'd like to do is drag this up. That's just going to make our screenshot a little easier to work with because we're going to do things here. These are query field, these are open query fields, and as you drag things down here, you can do things in here to build your query. So I'm going to drag the bidder ID here because I want to select for the bidder ID, and then I'm going to include the auction ID so I know something about which auction it was, and then I'm going to include the bids. And so now if I run this query, it's going to show everything in the bids table, but I don't want to do that. I'd like to, you see here that if you put in equals 1 here and then hit enter, you can also put or equals 2. Those are bidder IDs. You can keep clicking and keep entering or all the way down, which is really kind of nice. We only want equals 1, so we're gonna find all the bids that were made by bidder ID number 1, and so that's what we're going to put in the criteria here. And as we run our query, that's the exact same result we see in our textbook, in the listing, the associated listing for that activity, and it matches identically to the same detail from the textbook. And so here's another screenshot you can take. Remember to take it all the way over to this point so that we can see up to this end your name with the file extension, right? So we can see the results here. This would be the submission criteria you need to complete stage 4. We're going to close this, and we're going to save it with a descriptive file name. Start with Q because it's a query, and we're going to use the word find instead of view because we found bidder 1 bids. So that's what I'm putting in. Find bidder 1 bids. And that's how we're going to save this query. The last query is one of my favorites. We're going to take advantage of the joins we just created, and you'll have a chance to see how powerful this can be. But we're going to start with bidders, and we're going to create query design. And this time we're going to insert all 3. And just as we did before, we're going to reorganize the field so we can work a little easier. And I'm going to slide this up And the first thing we want to do is we want to run some simple statistics. We want to discover what the minimum bids were per person for each bidder. And we don't want to use the bidder ID. So we want to use their first name and last name because that's a lot more user-friendly. And we can see by name what kind of minimum. In order for the minimum and averages and maximums and standard deviations and so on to be a part of the query, we need to select this option in the upper right. It's called the totals. It allows the totals row to show here. So if I slide first name down and last name down, and then I take the bids, one here, one there, and one there, then I should have what I need. Except that I have to use this totals option. So you'll notice there's a totals field here, and I want to show first name and last name their minimum bid, so I'm going to group by minimum, and then group by average, then I'm going to show the maximum. And what this is going to do is it's going to generate the minimum, average, and maximum for each of the bidders by first name and last name. There is one more thing I'm going to do before I run this. I'm going to save this, and I'll go ahead and save it. So I'm going to go ahead and close this before I run it. I'm going to save it, and I'll call this bidder stats, or stats by bidder. Yeah, that makes sense. So stats by bidder, min, max, average, right? I want to come up to bidders, and I'd like to make a substitution. I'm going to take the first name of Adam Cooper in the table, and I'm going to insert my own first name. Now you need to do this also. You need to type in your own first name and your own last name. And the reason we're going to do that is so that you can see, well, the reason we're going to do this is partly for academic integrity reasons, but then also to show you how you can edit in tables directly in this mode. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'm going to go ahead and run my stats by bidder now. So I'd like to open it just to view it again. So I'm going to open it up in design view, and once again it'll show first name and last name from the bidders table, and it'll also show, wow, that really goes on and on and on, doesn't it? Okay, so it'll show first name, last name, and then the minimum bid, the average bid, and the maximum bid for each of the named bidders. So as I run this, well, I'm going to save this, I'm going to run it, and you'll see that there are some numbers here that are obscured. That's just a placeholder, so if I drag this border to the right for the average of bid column, see minimum of bid, average of bid, and max of bid. The query method here in Access assigns this this field name for the query. But I want you to notice here that this will match the textbook in the listing as well, with one exception. Instead of seeing Adam Cooper up here, you see the next in order all the way down, and then you see Adam Cooper's details down here with your own name substituted. Basically, because that record was edited last, it's going to show last in this query. because it was the most recently updated. This is the last and final screenshot that you submit for your stage 5 for this solution, SQL solution. And this concludes our walkthrough. Thank you very much. Please be sure to promptly notify the instructor if you have any questions or concerns in a format of record, and include contact information and your preference of schedules, so I know when to try to connect with you. Access is available in all of the campus computer labs. It's also available if you download the professional edition and load it on your own personal laptop, except for Mac users. So the best thing to do there is to go into the computer lab. You can also arrange to remotely access some virtual machines the instructor has ready that also include access on screen, so you can work this activity up there. Once again, this concludes our walkthrough, and have a great day.